Israel has every right to do what is necessary to decimate Hamas as a threat to Israel. But let's try to put this a bit more in some perspective. Bill Burns, the CIA director, is in Qatar right now to try to negotiate an extension of the ceasefire with Israeli counterpart, as well as with the Egyptians. Why? In order to facilitate more aid. Why? Because the Israelis don't have a good end game that they can share with the United States. And number three, Hamas, to all what we've been able to see so far, has only lost several thousand out of the 45,000 hardcore terrorists that are a part of the organization and its collateral terrorist organizations in Gaza.
Well, to your point on the conversations that were happening in Doha, it's the U.S. involved here and Egypt and Qatar. Do any of them have enough leverage over either the Israelis or Hamas to push for a continued ceasefire? Or ultimately, is this going to be up to these two groups? I just wonder how those kind of conversations are going with the other countries that are involved here.
Well, let's just assume for the record that Hamas wants as many ceasefire extensions as possible and dribble out as few hostages as possible. On the contrary, Israel wants its hostages back and is prepared probably to see if Hamas will release more hostages in a way that gives the Israeli public what it wants, which is at least an end to the hostage side of this equation. And I don't think that the Israeli military is sitting anxious to pull the trigger again at this point until they're able to figure out an end strategy once any ceasefire or durable extension of the current pauses comes to an end. We're playing, in effect, almost an hourly game here.
Ambassador Cayley asked you about Hamas's ability to rebuild and regroup in the middle of a pause like this. How about on the other side? How long can the IDF reasonably remain crouched if days or even weeks go by and still be ready?
I'm not worried about the IDF being ready. The incentive for the IDF and the 120,000 reservists have been called up is they're itching to get back into this fight. I'm not worried about it. What I'm more concerned about is the impact on Israel's economy. Israel was humming along until October 7th. And when you pull that many people out of the economy, that begins to have a significant impact on Israel's budget and as well as, I guess, domestic morale. But let's also not forget that there's another front in the north that is sapping Israel's energy as well. And as long as the conflict with Gaza continues, Israel faces an enormous challenge in the north, which, after all, is the real threat for a broader conflict, and that is between Hezbollah, Iran on the one hand, and the United States and Israel on the other.
Ambassador, I'm glad you brought that up because, as Joe mentioned, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is going to make another trip to the region. And in addition to expressing U.S. support for Israel, in addition to pushing for greater humanitarian relief, we do expect that a lot of his effort is going to be focused on preventing this conflict from expanding any further. How great do you think the risk is right now of this becoming wider regionally?
I think it's already pretty wide. The fact is that although Hezbollah and Israel have in effect respected what is taking place in Gaza, and so there's been somewhat of a truce between Hezbollah and Israel. Hezbollah's leader has made it very clear that as long as there are hostilities that are continuing in Gaza, Hezbollah will continue to do what it can to divert IDF attention away to, in effect, make Israel's life and the Israeli population's life in the north miserable, as well as Israel doing the same for southern Lebanon. You have a massive dislocation now on both sides of the border of inhabitants that have lived on both sides of the border as a result of the fear factor that it's at work, that at any hour, at any day, there can be a significant resumption of hostilities between Israel on the one hand and Hezbollah on the other.